Mueller. I'm these days mostly an Apple ecosystem developer. I'm also doing some fun side projects with PostGIS and Python and various other data sources. So what I want to show you today is some of the work that I've been doing with large language models. How many people in here, show of hands, have done any serious work with a large language model? Okay, that's a smattering. What I want to show you is how large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, and a few others can help you with your workflow. These are ways to use it for real problems. I'm not talking about ChatGPT, give me a recipe for a second date, but actually how to work with the code. ChatGPT, all of these large language models are trained really well on code bases. But in general, the flow is going to be, you need to know what your problem looks like. What is the answer going to be to look like? You're not going to be able to get to a finished solution just by vibe coding. You need, my best success has been with problems I understood, and yeah, I could have written this code myself. I could have done this process myself, but it sure did save me a lot of time. But you need to keep them on a short leash. Look at the think of it as steps in a process, not as a magic wand. And you know, test often. But pure vibe coding is not going to work. My own progression was starting with unit tests a couple of years ago. We were doing a big rewrite of an iPhone code base. And one of the things we were doing was we would get code for a user interface and need to generate unit tests for it, or needed to write unit tests for it. So generating these unit tests with ChatGPT 3 was a really good time saver. I'm currently on the $20 a month paid plan with ChatGPT. I haven't done much with Claude, not for any particular reason, just because I'm comfortable where I am. The advantage of that $20 a month plan is you get more queries, more work. You don't get downgraded to the older model as often. You don't have the interface kind of gatekeeping and say, nope, too much work today, come back tomorrow. I've also done a little bit of work with Cursor, which is a live editor. Cursor is really good at throwing it at a code base that you've never seen before. So, you know, the person that you are replacing because they just quit, you need to see what their workflow is doing. Cursor is a really good tool for that. So here's a problem I think we all see a lot. You've got a web endpoint that spits out some JSON, and you need to create code to talk to that JSON, to read it, to maybe to produce it. I'm sorry, what slide? Okay. So here's the sorry. This is the sample code for the unit test. So here's the code that I started with, and here's what we end up with. This is unit tests for that code base. So again, I could have written this code myself. It would have taken longer, and it's a tedious, not very interesting task. So here's the API spec I was talking about. This is some JSON coming from an arbitrary endpoint. And I want to generate some code, in this case in Swift, to represent that JSON. There's a couple of interesting things going on here. One is that this is raw ChatGPT output. It does a pretty good job of sticking to standard Swift style. The other thing, might not, you might miss if you're not a Swift programmer. We have this notion in Swift of automatic conversion between a JSON name and the Swift name. So we can stick to JSON coding conventions and convert that easily to Swift coding conventions. So that's what this coding keys is down below. Notice the conversion between the snake case, which is JSON style, and the camel case, which is Swift style. And that's generated automatically for me. So that's a pretty good indicator that ChatGPT knows at least a little bit of what's going on here. And it even tells me down at the bottom what it did. It uses the codable protocol to convert that. So this is a case where ChatGPT has automated a pretty tedious task. I could have done it myself, but this was faster. So about a year and a half ago, I did a presentation for MapTime Seattle on using beautiful soup to convert some live website data into stuff that I could plot. And when I wrote this original code, I had to go through the data model of the website piece by piece, manually extract what I needed, figure out what data columns were going to be in what HTML fields, and work through that manually and then implement it manually in Python. And one limitation of that also was if the data is not in the file, but instead it's rendered, you can't get that. So so I was building a couple of months ago a sample data set where we're going to pull in the locations of Spirit of Halloween stores. Spirit of Halloween is a pop-up that comes up, Halloween costumes. And I got a little frustrated with ChatGPT on this. I wanted to extract the data. And what I ran into was that the data wasn't there. The locations are rendered very nicely on a map, but the locations are not in the HTML that I pull in from the Spirit of Halloween API. So I asked it, why are you geocoding this stuff manually? The address, the locations are there. The addresses are all there. Why aren't you showing the map? Or why aren't you showing me the data? It also misled me a little bit. Oh, there actually isn't a public API for Spirit of Halloween. So again, this is a case where I'm keeping it on a short leash, reading the proposed answers as I go, and then course correcting. So this is what we got back. And here I'm feeding back the error message. So I'm actually generating this Python script piece by piece, running it iteration by iteration, and then sending the error message back to ChatGPT. So the ChatGPT eventually leads me to something that's kind of the other side of the coin that Christy was talking about. Instead of running Python in the browser, I need to run the browser in Python. And ChatGPT guided me toward a library that will actually run this query in my Python script the same query that would be run in the browser if I were retrieving this and viewing it live. And I had never heard of Playwright or Chromium in the middle of this. Okay. So we finally get these properties back, and I'm generating now CSV, shapefile, PostGIS insert queries, CSV, and this is 375 lines of Python that I didn't have to write. This came up in a Map Time Seattle planning meeting at noon one day, and I had lunch, started about 1 o'clock, and by 3 o'clock I was done. So. One of my side projects is a web map of the National Register of Historic Places, which is a pretty extensive database, about 100,000 points in it. The Park Service doesn't really have the funding or the resources to keep this thing up to date, but Wikipedia does. So one thing I had been doing to retrieve updated locations of these places was scraping Wikipedia by following a tag. And in the time between the first and the second iteration of this project, a new Wikipedia project came up which maps every single property. So not just properties that have articles written on them, but also what they're called, you may have heard them called red links or proposed article titles. So in this column, the fourth column over, you see the manually geocoded location. And so what I wanted to do was start at the top of this project, give me all the Wikipedia locations, or all the National Register locations in Washington, give me all the locations in Thurston County, Kittitas County, King County. Oh, well, King County is different. King County we have in Seattle and not in Seattle. And there are a lot of other states with exceptions like that. So this was a way, what I ended up doing was generating a Python script, building the tool, not building the data. And eventually extracting all of these data points. Anybody here ever work with Map Server? Anybody worked with Map Server more than 10 years ago? So one of the real wins with ChatGPT is the ability to time segregate the queries. So I had a Map Server file that I probably started this thing 15 years ago. And Map Server file syntax has changed a lot over the years. And one of the wonderful things about the World Wide Web is that all the old comments from 15 years ago are still there. So if I just go blindly searching for Map Server information, I'm going to get a lot of obsolete results. So what I wanted to do was update this thing so it works on Map Server 8.4. And I got it. Again, I could have done this myself. It would have taken a long time. It wouldn't have been very fun. So I want to hit quickly the project I'm working on currently, which is stereographs and stereograph viewers. Back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, every household would have one of these handheld viewers. You drop a stereo card into it. The card was captured by a particular stereo camera. And then you had basically a ViewMaster. You can still buy a ViewMaster at Target, it turns out. And I've been working with some railroad photos from the Central Pacific Railroad construction. there was a photographer hired to document this thing over 3 years. Well, I wanted, and these are digitized in the public domain, so I wanted to download these. So I go into the Stanford Library and I see this interface and I see, oh yeah, that's a good one. I want to download that. And I get this thing and, well, I don't want to do this 200 times. So iterate through and generated now a script to download all of those images. ChatGPT happened to know that the Stanford Library used a particular standard API, knew how to use that, walked me through. So I built the script, doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Oh, it's always DNS. So the next step is I wanted to extract, but that worked really well. The next step didn't work quite so well. I wanted to extract just the left and right frames from each of these cards. There's a lot of variation. Sometimes there's a boundary on the left, sometimes they're well centered. Went through 2 versions of this, one in Python with PIL and one in Swift with an Apple framework. And neither of them was really very good. So ChatGPT suggested, well, pick out a training set and give me the exact boundaries of the training set, and then I'll process that. I need an automated tool to do that. Well, ChatGPT built this for me. This was starting with Xcode's standard project template. Just give me a Mac program. And all the code in this was ChatGPT generated. And we get into things like this. So what I ended up doing was not building something to build a training set, but just something where I could iterate through a couple hundred image pairs and get a good starting point and then refine it myself with manual scrolling. One thing I've gotten in the habit of doing is at the end of one of these projects, I will ask the LLM to generate a markdown file for me, explaining what I just did. And I can put that in the notes and file it away. So this is a snapshot of the project that was generated. So I've got about 30 seconds for questions. Take a picture of this slide if you like. That's my contact info. The stereograph extractor is up on GitHub. The interesting thing about the stereograph extractor is even if you're not a Swift programmer, even if you don't care about Apple anything, it's interesting to go through piece by piece, commit by commit, and see what the steps were. And then the historic register database is online here. Quick questions? Otherwise, you can hit me up anytime during this today. I'll be here. Okay, thank you.